everybody, welcome back. It's Anthony and Bob Barker again with another build. This time we're trying to fix that big old problem there we had with this floor mirror. I guess it's called a cheval mirror. So someone came to me with the issue, it broke, and she didn't really want to throw it away. So after looking at everything, I gave her a few options. I told her we can either try to repair it, which would not be easy to do, especially since a lot of the splintered wooden pieces were missing. I could just try to recreate it, or we can just make something that's a little bit more simple and streamlined, depending on whatever she prefer. And in the end, she decided that she would just like to simplify it, just have a little bit more of a clean line option. And so that's what we're going to do here. The other issue that we had was, since I'll be making a brand new base for it, it'd be a little difficult to fully match the color. And to be honest, the color of the frame was not my favorite anyways. It just kind of reminds me a little bit more of the older school style. So we're going to sand it down and we're going to just basically try to get everything to match and make it a little bit more updated. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to find under this finish. But it definitely is like some oak under there, and the color matching between the pieces isn't that great, but I think it all works well enough together where this should still work. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to make some plywood templates for the pieces that I'm going to be using to make the base. We're going to keep it very simple. So I just kind of cut them down to size and just carefully mark where I want it to be. That way we can get it all cut out and get the shape of it right. And so for the pieces, I wanted to have kind of a taper on them. So I made this jig a while ago during another video, but basically I just reusing it. I just took out the little stops there and just screwed them back into where I needed them for this particular one to get it all lined up perfectly. So you just hold it off the edge of there and use this little hole down there, and then just run it through the table saw, and that's going to give you good repeatable cuts. That way I can get this same shape on both of the footing pieces. So those are going to be the main ones for the feet, and for the arms going up that will actually hold the mirror in place. I figured it was easier just to get a track saw and just kind of cut along the lines that I was looking for. The reason why I was going for like the tapered look is because the main mirror itself is round, so I didn't want to go too square with everything. Now with the straight clean lines that we're doing for the base, it is very square, but we're going to add a lot of roundovers to all edges of it, and that'll soften it up enough where it will make more sense with the finished piece. There's a ton of ways to add the roundovers to the edge of this, but I figured just putting a roundover bit on the trim router was the easiest way for me to do it on this one. And of course I put the other piece on underneath it and kind of clamped them together so I don't get a bunch of tear out. And then so for here, we're trying to maximize the use of this oak board. It's a white oak board that I had. So I'm just kind of tracing out the pieces on there, and then we're going to cut them down to size. And then I bring them over with a track saw and cut as close to the lines as I can to get them roughly to where we want them before we actually do the final shaping with the pattern on the router table later. And the nice thing with that is, since I already know what shape I want and I've already got it pre-made, then I know both of my sides are going to be identical and match each other. And this was a really kind of nice change of pace for me, because lately a lot of my builds have been getting a little bit more intricate and extra time consuming. So it was nice to kind of take a step back and do something that was a little bit more simple and straightforward, and that was actually able to complete in a much faster period of time. And it's also a good reminder that, if we have any piece of furniture that might be a little outdated or just not quite to your taste, or of course broken, there's always going to be ways to fix and rehab it, and you can get new life out of these things, and that's really kind of fun to do. And so now we have all of our pieces cut out, so it's time to get them joined together. Now I'm using my domino because it's fast and easy, but another good way that I really actually was thinking about doing for this one would be to add some dowels. But in the end, I wanted this to be a little faster, so that's why I ended up going with my domino. So we did this for both of the legs, and then just add a ton of glue inside the holes and on the dominoes themselves. Pound them in place, and then once again I found extra use for my relatively new pipe clamps there. They were the only ones that I had that were long enough to hold this well, so I'm extra glad that I did get those just with my last project. And at this point, I was happy with how the build was coming together. However, I wasn't that sure how much I liked the actual design, just because everything looks so kind of harsh and square compared to the roundness of the mirror. But that's where the next step came in. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding a large 3/8 round over to all of the surfaces, and what that's going to end up doing is going to make those edges completely round. So like it's about 3/4 of an inch thick, so those 2 3/8 match together, and it gives the whole thing a much more rounded and softer feel. And I felt like that works so much better with the rounded mirror, so it kind of helps out a lot. Now here's another thing that I've been having some trouble with lately. I've been lining up the dominoes and doing it, but it kind of wiggles a lot on me. So what I really need to do is just put a piece on the back of this just for the domino to sit on. That way it doesn't move around. But my second error here was I had a few lines, and instead of putting the domino hole where it was marked, I did it on what was supposed to be the bottom of where the piece was going to go. So I had to do another hole, which means the domino hole was like a double long. So I got a scrap piece here. I kind of use my sander just to round over the edge so it matches kind of the domino feel. And then I'm just going to glue it into the part that wasn't supposed to have the domino hole in there. And I use that some blue tape to hold it in there. And after it's dried up, I just use my little pull saw there to trim off the top of it, and then we can go ahead and sand it down. And it ended up giving a pretty good repair. Now, I wasn't as precise with the edge of it, so there's a little bit of a gap there. And that's why I'm mixing the glue with some sawdust here, so we can kind of fill that in and just hide it as much as possible. And the other thing that's going to help with this is going to be underneath the support piece, so you're really not going to be able to see it at all unless you know exactly where to look. So with that fixed up, it's time to get these all glued up and put together. Now I have this one support piece here that's going to go across. And then I was very careful with the sizing of this because I needed it to match the width of the mirror along with the hardware that holds everything in place. Otherwise, there's going to be a little bit of awkward tension on it. So after we get that all sized up and glued up, we can just clamp that together. And then I was really careful to wipe off all the excess glue so that way it'd be easier to put some finish on it. So after going back and forth a little bit about the coloring, she decided that she wanted to go with the Rubio Smoke 5%. It's a little bit of a lighter color on there, and it kind of is pretty close to like the natural oak color. And that's what she really was hoping for. So we're going to go ahead and do that on that base, and then also on the frame from the original mirror. And then after we get that on, of course, we wiped it all down and cleaned it up, and then it's time to start getting assembling. So putting in here the hardware that holds the mirror in place, and I didn't actually have any tool that worked well to do this, so I just used my edge guide from my router, and that actually worked perfectly. So we get those placed in on both sides, and then another thought that I had is with those long bases, probably want to raise them up a little bit just so it makes it easier for them to sit nice and straight, just in case the floor isn't perfectly level. So we just put these little furniture feet pads there on the bottoms just to be safe, and I did the clear just so it doesn't stick out so much on the color of those. So with that done, we can go ahead and put the mirror back in place. And now this one, it had a couple little shims to hold it in that you can see me putting those there. That just gives it a little bit of a tighter fit inside there. So when you're moving the mirror, it doesn't kind of shake around inside of it. And the original thing had these little foam tiny pads in there. So I figured I'll just put them back in place. And then for the back end, we're just going to screw that back on. I thought about sanding this down to kind of change the color of it, but it's going to be on the back and you're never really going to see it. So I figured I would just leave that alone. And that's all there really was to it. So now we just get to do the final assembly, putting it onto the new base. And for that, it was a little bit awkward, but I just used these little side screws that go into the hardware that's onto the mirror. And then that'll keep it nice and in place, so then the mirror doesn't rock anymore once you get it tightened down enough. So in the end, this was a pretty fun build for me to do. I think it's a much nicer color tone with that wood and a nice, clean, simple base. And more importantly, it was exactly what she wanted. So that's going to be it for this one. Let me know what you guys think below, and we'll see you in the next video.